The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
It's right about time again to swerve again, confuse the general fans again. I don't know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Swerve. Today I have a very special guest, somebody I've never met before, I've never spoken to before, I've never seen his work before, I'll be honest with you, but to give him credit, I know of him. He's out there on the internet, he gets his name out there, a couple of incidents, and that's a credit, because in wrestling, you know, everybody is trying to, publicize themselves, get themselves over. I know this individual by a couple of incidents that we're going to talk about. One of them is sweeping the internet. I'll be honest with you. It made me fall in love with this guy. So it's no mystery why he's on the show. I'm talking about the one and only Joey Ryan. Joey, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to get over a cold, but other than that, I'm fine. I'm good. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Joey. It's really great to meet you because, as I said, I'll be honest with you, bro. I'm familiar with you, but not familiar with your work because your name always comes up all over the place. And basically, an incident just took place, I guess, about a week or so that just stole my heart. Just stole my heart. And when I saw this, I said, you know what? I got to get this Joey on the show. We're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about his career. But, Joey, I got to ask you this first, and I'm going to try to whisper because I hear a woman in the background. On your Twitter page, not the thumbnail, the big picture of you, there's you and some female. Who is that female?
Oh, that's my tag team partner, Candice LeRae. Yeah, we do the world's cutest tag team. We do intergender tag team, and we wrestle at PWG and different, she's coming to Japan with me in January. So we've been just, doing the scene as an intergender tag team.
How does that, it's interesting that you say that, Joey, because I just had on my show, and when I give you the names, you're probably going to know why. I had Kimberly and I had Chris Dickinson. And do you know the background there?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
So how do you handle the intergender wrestling now? Are the guys allowed to wrestle the girls, et cetera? And how is that handled?
Well, for the most part, Candice and I we team against two men. Sometimes we do mixed tags or intergender tags, but for the most part, it's her and I. We do the scene as a man and a woman tag team, but we wrestle guys, regular tag teams. We've wrestled Kazarian and Daniels. We've wrestled the Young Bucks. We've wrestled a lot of different tag teams across the scene. But I think intergender, for me, it's just like any other kind of wrestling. It can be done well and it can be done poorly. We have a few specific rules we follow about how to make it, how to tell a story with it, basically. Candice will never go toe-to-toe with anybody, and she'll never out punch a guy in a match, but we find creative ways to let her hit her offense, whether it's using her speed, her agility, her mobility, and we make it work and present it as as believable a story as we can, because we obviously want the fans to be able to follow along with what we're doing. Yeah,
Joey, I think Lucha Underground has done a really great job, with the way they use the girls on the show, and it's very believable. The guys sell for the girls, but listen, I'm a big fan of women wrestling. And I experienced some situations that were not so good when it came to women and guys in the ring at the same time. And I really think what a lot of that has to do with is, even though you guys are all workers, I think sometimes the girls wind up getting hurt in matches that involve guys because sometimes I think the guys just don't know their own strength. And I think when you're in a match, when you're a guy and that adrenaline is flowing, whether it's a work or not, bro, the adrenaline is flowing, you hear the crowd, you get into it, all of a sudden you're picking up a girl that's maybe $115 and not, 200 pounds like a guy, 225. And I think sometimes you just forget your own strength. I think that happened with Kimberly and Chris. And I mean, that was really hard to watch. And thank God she didn't get hurt. but I think it could have been disastrous. And on top of that, listen, Joey, I know how the business works. I know the girls, it's a man's world. I mean, a lot of them really have to scratch, claw, fight for a spot. So I think a lot of times, like, the girls would never say no when a guy asks them to do something and they may be a little afraid to do it. Do you ever run across that situation with your partner?
You know what, I can see where that is, and I agree that maybe when Chris threw Kimberly, he didn't realize just how far he was going to throw her. But Candice and I are pretty good about we whether it's through reputation or even first time meeting or just kind of getting the feel for a wrestler, is we have certain moves or certain situations we put Candice in when we trust the opponent, and when we don't trust him as much, we won't put Candice as much in harm's way. You really have to be smart about it, because you're right that it's different, and every wrestler's different, and you just got to make sure that, pretty much for me, the only rule in professional wrestling is not to hurt each other. So you just got to make sure you're not putting yourself in position to get hurt.
Yeah. Hey, Joey, now listen, I know a lot of your background. We're going to talk a lot about that today. I know a lot of it is, out there in Southern California. Were you born and raised? Are you a California kid?
Yeah, born and raised in Los Angeles.
So who were some of the wrestlers that you grew up idolizing in that part of the world?
Well, we didn't really have, when I was growing up, we didn't really have WCW or NWA and stuff out here. We so I was a WWF guy, or WWE now, obviously, but I grew up being a big Hulk Hogan fan. One of my earliest, I have 3 older brothers. My earliest memories are watching wrestling with them, watching WrestleMania 2, WrestleMania 3 with my brothers. So I was a Hulk Hogan guy. And then when I got a little bit older, I started to like Shawn Michaels a lot. He became a guy that I watched a lot of. I didn't really watch wrestling to study until I got into wrestling, and that's when I started watching older stuff.
Yeah. Now, Joey, let me ask you a question, because I was very interested in this, and I want to ask you about this a little bit.
Yeah.
You work a lot with an organization in California called Pro Wrestling Guerrilla.
Yep.
And I'm reading background on this, and I'm trying to get a good understanding. Now, I guess you and 5 of your friends, I guess it was 6 guys that were workers and wrestlers. You started this around 2003, correct?
Yes.
How did that come about first, before I get into the questioning? How does 6 guys, listen, bro, we know the wrestling business, and a lot of guys aren't, I'll be honest with you, intelligent enough to start their own promotion. How does 6 wrestlers get together and say, you know what, we're going to start our own promotion out here?
Well, it was kind of, we were dealing with a lot of different things, different promotions out here with promoters that were not there. They meant well, but they weren't really experienced, and they, there was a promotion. XPW was out here, which was a bigger promotion run by Rob Black. He had, money coming in from his porn company, which helped him finance that. But, so when that attention came to Southern California, a lot of different promoters were like, oh, I want to come cash in and promote there. But the promoters weren't really experienced, and they surrounded themselves by yes men, and they would run all these big shows, but then 1 or 2 shows, they would be cashed out because they really didn't have the experience to know what they were doing. And then, so that, like, the 6 of us who were not even really necessarily wrestling in the same circles, but we were acquaintances with each other because we obviously were all in the scene together. We just kind of decided, hey, let's cut out the promoter and let's just run our own show. And we're wise to the business. We know who's going to draw money and who's not going to draw money, who's going to bring audience, an audience to our shows. And really, all we did was we initially, the 6 of us, we each threw in, I think, $400 or $500 each, and we were just going to run the one show. And but like, it caught on, and people heard about it, and then we sold a bunch of DVDs from it. And that's really the only money we've spent of our own, is that initial investment in to the promotion, and then every show since then it has made enough money to pay for the next one. And it's just, we've been blessed that it's been 12 years now, 13, going on 13 years. So
Joey, that's amazing. And let me tell you why I say that's amazing, Joey. I ran 2 shows in my entire life. They were Christian wrestling shows. And I got to tell you, bro, it was the hardest work I ever did in the wrestling business because I was involved in all assets of promoting the show. But like Joey, so that's what intrigues me with this. You guys were workers and you guys were wrestlers. How did you learn to put together all the facets of, number one, putting a show together, and number two, doing it in a way where it was going to be successful?
Yeah, it was to learn how to promote was just like a trial by error, I guess, or trial by fire, try and error. Don't even know how to say it. Trial by fire kind of thing, where we just did the best we could, and we learned from the mistakes we made. Luckily, we never made any huge mistakes that cost us financially, so much that we couldn't keep going. But yeah, it was just kind of a common sense thing, I guess, and again, we had a lot of relationships in wrestling with guys that we, that maybe had never come out west to wrestle, and they were willing to give us a deal on their prices and things like that, before, the company was making as much money as it is these days. But it was just, a lot of friends doing us favors at first, and, the inmates running the asylum kind of feel to it, where, it wasn't like if these guys came in, if we brought in AJ Styles to wrestle, it wasn't like we were, AJ Styles' boss or his promoter that day. We were, he had as much input on the show or his match as we did, because we wanted everyone to have fun and enjoy it and be a place where everyone likes to work. And I think that really benefited, because then if people like to work, they work hard. And that kind of built a reputation about having high quality wrestling matches.
Well, so Joey, you've been running Guerrilla now for 12 years. How often do you run?
Well, it's come and gone in spurts. In maybe 2005, 2006, we were running twice a month, which, was probably the busiest time we had. We were using a lot more local guys back then. But now it's more of an all-star show. So it's, it's kind of like guys who are under contract to Ring of Honor or TNA or, Evolve. They really can't cross promote too much of that out on the East Coast, but the West Coast, we kind of tend to be an island of our own. And since we don't do like iPay-per-views, we just do DVDs. There's no contractual restrictions. So it's kind of, we bring the best of the independent world out here. So there's probably we run maybe about 10 shows a year. So every 6-7 weeks, maybe. So it's, it's less shows now, but I think the shows are a lot more high quality, and there's a lot more name independent talent on the shows.
Hey, Joey, I have to ask you this question. Why don't you do iPay-per-views? Because, it's funny now because, just kind of watching the wrestling scene unfold, and, it's always that, getting that network is so important to a wrestling company. And, we see, TNA's been flopping around, and, Jeff, GFW hasn't been able to get a network. But I'm convinced, man, with the internet and social media, I think a promoter can make money just running shows through the internet. I don't necessarily think they need to have a television network anymore. How come you don't go down that route? Is that something you considered?
It's not really, because we lose most of our roster if we do that, because certain contracts for Ring of Honor or TNA or whatever, those guys can't appear on iPay-per-views, or they can't appear on TV, like, because those are the kind of media that those companies run in. So if they're restricted by contracts to not be on other iPay-per-views or be on other television shows, that's not then we would lose them if we tried to get into those markets. So staying with the DVD market and having highspots.com back us on our DVD market, our DVD selling, it's more or less just how we can keep the shows as high quality as they are.
But yeah, you know what, Joey, let me ask you this. You got a following now of 12 years, okay? So, people obviously know you, and you're a draw. Do you think it would be worth, to get new faces now and, really unknown talent across the board to take the shot at the iPay-per-view? There may be a whole lot of money there on the table that you're not taking.
Very well could be. And to be honest, lately, we've been using a lot of international guys from England, guys from Germany, guys from different parts of the world, Mexico, with like the surge of Lucha Underground, like you said, those guys are kind of making a name for themselves out here in America. I just, you never know what's going to be turned. Maybe we're waiting for the right opportunity to present itself, or maybe that is something down the line that we're going to take a shot at. But for right now, I mean, we're pretty content with where we're at. We sell out every single show we do, and we in a world that has a lot of bootlegging online and things like that. We still do pretty good DVD business. So.
Yeah.
I guess until our hand is forced, we might just kind of, use our business model the way it is. But you never know. Like I said, the next year or two, we might have to, do something more internet friendly.
Joey, I got to tell you something. Listen, we've just been talking now for about 15 minutes, and yeah. I need to talk to a wrestler for about 2 minutes to be able to tell their level of intelligence. I can tell you're a very intelligent guy, and you know what you're doing, and it's a credit to you. But I have to ask you this, Joey. Wrestlers will be wrestlers. Now, yeah. You said when you first started, the pro Wrestling Guerrilla, that yeah. You were having difficulties with the promoters, and I can surely understand that. But on the other side of the coin, you're dealing with 5 other wrestlers, and listen, we all know wrestlers and ego, go hand in hand. I'm just curious, are you still working with the original 5 guys? And how are you guys been able to run this for so long without egos and clash and conflict?
There's only 3 of us that are still around from the original 6. But that's just because the other 3 have phased themselves out of wrestling. They don't work in the business at all anymore, but we're still friends with them. And I think that's part of it. A huge part of it was the fact that we were all friends, before we started it, and we remained friends during it. And you're right though. I mean, business does change friendships. But luckily for us, we've kind of all just, when we started being more successful, we just, it's not like a thing where we, take the profits from a show and split it up. We just booked ourselves as wrestlers and paid ourselves to wrestle on the shows, and all the extra money would go back into the show and be in the next show. So it was never like a thing where someone would say like, oh, I did more work this time, or I was in a main event match, so I need more pay. Or it wasn't like that. We just booked ourselves what our normal wrestling rates would be, and then all the extra money would go right back into the next show to be able to securely run shows month to month. At the time. So we just kind of kept it as friendly as possible without letting business kind of dictate our friendships.
Now, Joey, I know for a while there you had your toe in the TNA water. I didn't watch any of that, but I'm going to talk to you a little about this. I know the background, and I read up on it, and I know something that was going out on the time. But, Joey, with the success you have now of your own promotion for 12 years, which is phenomenal, man, fantastic that you can call your own shots in this business, do you tend away from working full-time for one of the bigger companies? Or if that situation came along, would you put your own promotion on the back burner?
Well, I mean, I did that. Well, kind of, because when I was in TNA, I did the gut check thing, and they brought me in as like a when I did the, when I got told no in the gut check, and then I, cut the promo on Taz and Al Snow and Bruce Pritchard and Eric Bischoff loved it, and they signed me, but they wanted me to seem as though I wasn't signed, so they wanted me to keep doing business as usual on the indies. So I didn't restrict myself off any indies until they acknowledged that I was under contract. But the time during that time, which was probably the last 6 months I was there, 6 or 7 months I was there, I didn't do the PWG shows. I didn't really even help out in the office side of PWG. So it's a thing where, we're all of us kind of know how to run it in the business side of it. So if for any reason one of us needs to leave, that's why, the 3 guys who are no longer in wrestling, this promotion has been able to remain successful without them being there, is because it's kind of not self-sustaining, but all of us kind of wear all the hats, so we kind of know how to do it when one person has to step away or 2 people have to step away.
Joey, what happened? Now, listen, I'm talking about, now from a, listen, I was a, head writer for a very long time.
Yeah.
I used to love situations where I would have the opportunity to work with an individual such as yourself. Because obviously you're somebody, bro, you run your own promotion. You clearly understand the entire business. To me as a writer, I would have took that as, an absolute 100% asset. because I would have known that. Listen, a lot of wrestlers. It's an I game. It's about me, myself, and I. But I know you probably would have been trained a little differently, having your own promotion. I would think that would have been a plus behind the scenes, with TNA, rather than, just being a performer. Why did things eventually wind up not working out at TNA?
It was a lot of when I first started when they were bringing me in to do like the guy that would come in from the crowd and the guy that wasn't quote unquote wasn't signed, bringing the guy that was storming the castle, so to speak. It was a lot of group input from the writers and myself on how we could get this over. Once they brought me on as a full-time wrestler, they paired me up with Matt Morgan, which was fine. I really enjoyed wrestling with Matt. He's great. But I don't think they really had a long-term plan for us, which kind of left us without direction. And I don't, we pitched a few ideas, but since they didn't really know what they wanted to do with us, it came down to, well, they didn't really want Matt to sell, so because he's such a big guy. So we do these tag matches where I would get beat up, and then Matt would take over, and then I would come in and I would lose control for us, and then Matt would come in and reestablish it, and then I would lose the match for us because they weren't pushing us; they were just kind of having us there. And then I feel like after a while, they just started making Matt look kind of stupid to the audience, because why would he keep teaming with me if all I did was cost him matches all the time? So they were trying to build him up as this monster, but I think the fans started reading it as he's just he's just dumb because he just keeps teaming with me. And then because we were doing that for so long, I think we lost any kind of heat or any kind of steam we had going. And then I think what really was the downfall of me being there and a group of us actually being there was when TNA when they left Orlando and they wanted to do the shows on the road. And they started touring the different areas. I think that was maybe a little bit more expensive than they realized, or they weren't drawing as well as they thought they would. So they were starting to lose a lot of money. And there was a time, around then that they cut, I think 12 or 13 of us right away, and they didn't re-sign RVD and they didn't re-sign Matt Morgan. So they were trying to kind of cut their money as much as they could so they could sustain their own establishment, since they were losing so much money on the road, I think.
Yeah, Joey, I remember this is where your name first came to me. I guess it was the angle with Taz, and there was a little stuff going on back and forth on Twitter. Was any of that stuff legitimate with Taz, or was that all the work?
It's.
And let me tell you why I'm asking you that, Joey. I got to tell you why I'm asking that.
Yeah.
I've been friends with Taz. I was instrumental in getting him in the WWE. So, I mean, that goes all the way back to, I don't know, bro, 98, 99, okay? Yeah. However, I've also felt the wrath of Taz, and I love the man to death, but have never met anybody so stubborn and so close-minded in my life. And I know what it is to be on the other side of Taz because I was there. So, I'm just curious, how much of that was a work? How much of that kind of overstepped boundaries? What was going on during that time?
It was really kind of gray, to be honest with you, because I did the gut check thing, and they did the judges' results and everything, and without straight telling me that they were gonna say no, because I was the second ever one, and they took the first guy, and I don't think they wanted to take the first guy. I think Ric Flair had shot a little bit on the company and made them take the first guy, So anyways, without telling me straight out that they were going to tell me no, because I think they liked the match I had with Austin Aries, and they liked the character, and so they kept coming at me, and they kept saying no matter how this goes out here, we're interested in using you maybe down the line, basically saying that I was going to be a no without coming out, because they wanted the natural reactions on TV. The gut check segments weren't, at least for me, or I don't know if it was how much of the judges, they weren't scripted. We didn't rehearse them. They wanted the natural reaction. Eric Bischoff loved reality TV. It probably still does. So he wanted natural reactions. So when I went out there to do it, literally 5 seconds before I went out there, Eric Bischoff pulled me inside and said, I understand you're pretty good with the microphone. And, I was like, oh, I'm okay. I'm trying to be humble in that situation. He said, go ahead and feel free to speak your mind. So once I got that okay, I knew that if this was going to be my one time on national television, I was going to make it worth my while. I was going to be remembered. So I'd never met Taz previous to that, not in an indie show, not any conventions or anything. So he didn't know me from anybody else, and obviously I was familiar with his work, but they had him be the last judge to tell me no, and so they had me. Luckily, they had me present myself as a heel during the match with Austin Aries and in the gut check segment itself. So I figured if I'm a heel character here, I'm not just gonna like, oh, thanks, sirs, and tuck my tail between my legs and leave. So I grabbed the microphone and I shot without shooting. I took shots that I knew would get reactions without necessarily meaning them. Like when I was calling Taz old, or when I was telling past his prime, whatever I was saying, I can't even remember exactly. But since Taz didn't know me at all and didn't know, we hadn't rehearsed this wasn't scripted. He probably thought I really meant these or things, or he didn't understand, or maybe at the time, because we've obviously talked since. He didn't realize I was just saying whatever I could say to be memorable or to be remembered for this moment, or to get a job, which I did. If I pushed the envelope enough, maybe they would like it and maybe they would use me again. So that's what I did. I just kind of cut this heel promo. In my head, it was a promo. To Taz, at the time at least, he might have thought I was shooting on him. So when I got to the back, after that whole thing was over, Al Snow came to the back, Eric Bischoff came to the back, Bruce Pritchard came to the back, and they were just like, that was awesome. That's exactly what we want this segment to be. Blah, 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 putting me over big. And, there's like, Taz is probably going to be a little upset at you, kind of giving me the hint there. Maybe wait till we talk to him to smooth it over a little bit. But I didn't see Taz again because, he went back to the commentary table because he was doing commentary. So he didn't, so I actually didn't see him for the rest of the night. And then I flew home the next day and they called me literally when I walked in the door. I was maybe home an hour before I got the call from Bruce Pritchard saying, we want to offer you a contract, this and that. We want you to keep playing up as if you don't have a contract. So go ahead and use social media, use the internet, use whatever you can to like make a stink about not being signed so we can use that in the storyline. So then I didn't have a relationship with Taz at the time. I didn't have his phone number to text him or to get anything. So I just started taking shots online because that's what I was told by my boss to do. So I can imagine that if nobody had told Taz this was going to happen, or if nobody, if that wasn't a thing that, was okayed by him, because I didn't have any way to talk to him about it, he probably was a little pissed. And then when I finally got there and was doing stuff more full time, we had a talk, and he I think he wanted to make sure that I wasn't being disrespectful just to be disrespectful or to not, I think he wanted to make sure he knew where my head was at. And, since then we've talked and we're friends now. We talk pretty frequently now. So things moved over. But at the time, there's probably a lot of awkward tension.
Yeah. Hey, Joey, I could tell you, listen, with all due respect, it had nothing to do with him not knowing you or this and that. There was an instance at TNA where Bubba and Taz have been friends forever. Okay, and Bubba was walking to the back, and Taz was at the announce table, and Bubba said something to Taz that was unscripted. All right,
yeah.
Taz got out of his seat. It was World War III backstage at TNA with Taz. So whether he knows you for 5 minutes or 50 years, like that's just Taz. But I'm glad, I'm glad you two are getting along, because like I said, I always hate to be on that side of the guy. That's why I had to ask. Hey, Joey, I'm going to ask you something very interesting now, because you said a lot of interesting things, during that answer. And also it relates back to you running your own promotion. Okay.
Yes.
I look at the situation now, Joey, at the WWE, and listen, I'm not a fan of today's product. I mean, I'm just not. I feel a lot of the entertainment aspect and the characters has been taken out of professional wrestling. I'm not a fan of, in-ring 20-minute matches. If I want to see a real fight, I'll watch UFC. That's just me, in my opinion. But I want to ask you this, Joey, because you did this here, and I'm interested in getting your take. I think the talent on the WWE roster is great. I think it's phenomenal. But basically, the people I talk to, every one of these guys are very scripted. They're put inside a shoebox. They're afraid to speak up, and they're doing exactly what they're told. They're saying exactly what they're told to say. Thus, in my opinion, nobody's really getting over. Now, listen, I understand all about, listen, man, there aren't too many places to work in wrestling these days. These guys don't want to rock the boat. They've got a contract with the WWE. They make good money. But a lot of these performers have to be frustrated. A lot of them know that, they are better than they're perceived to be, but they've got the handcuffs on. How would you? Now, you said here you knew this was your one opportunity on television. This was your break. You wanted to get a contract, and quite frankly, Joey, it sounds like you took your balls in your hand and boom, you went out and thought what would get you noticed and what would get you a contract, and that worked in your favor. Would you recommend that, to guys, late 20s, early 30s that are kind of handcuffed and not getting over and know that they're better than that, but really afraid to just go out and do it? Because that's the thing. Everybody wants to blame Vince McMahon and creative. I say at some point the talent's got to take their balls in their hand and say, you know what? I could do better than this. Let me try it. If I fall on my face, I fall on my face. How do you feel about that?
Obviously those guys are in a sticky situation because, as you said, they've got contracts and they're trying to be good soldiers. But it's. I had a unique situation because I wasn't under contract, and I knew that if I just played it safe, then I would just be forgotten. They had nothing invested in me. Other than the 2 weeks of TV that they were presenting me for the gut check. So, I knew I had nothing to lose. Obviously, if a guy that's there now goes and does something off script or, tries to shoot a little bit or whatever it is, he could risk his job that he's already, he already has a contract. And, they've got 70, 80, 90 guys down at NXT now that are waiting to come up. So I could see where it's a little bit more difficult and you kind of want to be more of a team player. Without being in the situation myself, at least there at WWE and those guys, it's really hard to say. If you get to a point where you're so frustrated that, or you feel like maybe the axe is coming soon and you feel like maybe you have a little less, to lose, then maybe go ahead and take that shot at, doing something memorable. But the way, like you said, the way wrestling is today is everyone's kind of playing it safe, and I can't blame a guy who's trying to keep his paychecks coming in. A lot of those guys have families, and they and a lot of them that have come up through the system don't really know how to work the indies either. So you see a lot of guys who get cut, and then they don't really know what to do because they didn't come up through the indies; they came up through the WWE system. So so they don't really know how to make money outside of WWE, and I'm sure a lot of them are worried about having to bag groceries for money. So it's really a tough situation, and I can see either way.
Yeah. Hey, Joey, let me ask you this question, too. Listen, I like I said to you earlier, I became a fan of wrestling like in the early 70s. And
sure.
the first people I ever saw on my television screen were the Valiant Brothers and Captain Lou Albano. So
okay.
that will explain to you why I was raised on the entertainment aspect of it.
Sure.
Through and through, and that carried on through WrestleMania and the Attitude Era, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, if I was that same kid today and I was watching today's product, I would not be a wrestling fan. I'm not the fan of the in-ring product. I like the characters, the storylines, and the pageantry. But I want to ask you something, Joey. Growing up in California, and yeah. I know, you worked a little bit with Wrestling Society X that was on TV for a short period of time. Now Lucha Underground, they're doing a lot of pageantry, a lot of color, vignettes shot differently. It looks like a movie. Does it tend to come out of California a little bit more entertainment oriented because it's Hollywood?
Yeah, I didn't really even thought about it in terms like that, but it does make sense that they want things to be a little more movie like or TV show like. But yeah, I agree with you. I grew up, like I said, with three older brothers, and I, watching wrestling in the 80s. So when I decided how I wanted to present myself, I wrestled for a few years and then tried to be like a straight-laced babyface guy, and then realized that, that wasn't the kind of wrestling that wasn't the reason I wanted to be a wrestler, to be this guy. I kind of adopted a 80s look and 80s personality because I wanted to be the guys that I grew up watching. But yeah, it's just I'm with you with the characters and the pageantry stuff, because I especially now in the world today when MMA is so popular and people know what real fights look like and they know professional wrestling isn't a real fight. I feel like wrestling, at least what I try to do with my wrestling, is to take what professional wrestling has that MMA doesn't have, and that's comedy and characters and colorfulness, and try to do it over the top, and for lack of a better term, to be faker, because MMA is real. So,
Joey, you hit the nail on the head, because that's what I sit here and I scream from the mountaintops. Why would you try to compete with MMA on the match level when their fight is real and your fight is fake, and get away from the thing that makes you different, which is the characters and the story? Exactly what you're saying. I don't know how that type of mentality came into play. What's your feel on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess because I guess because of the popularity of it, and like maybe professional wrestling, because maybe who's ever in charge these days thought MMA was kind of stepping on their toes a little bit with these presentations. But the way I look at it, it's completely different things. Mm-hmm. And I agree. I think wrestling should use its advantages of what it has over MMA, and that's the ability to work things and to present things as over the top. I feel like trying to compete with or trying to even act like they're in the same category is a detriment to both products. They should be completely treated differently. It's like boxing and wrestling, that before MMA, well, maybe there's a little bit of gap there, but like I remember in the 80s, a lot of people were like comparing boxing with pro wrestling, and to me they're just two completely different things. I don't think either of them should even be like worried about the other one. I think you should, different forms of entertainment, for me anyways.
Yeah. Well, Joey, that's the thing, too, like that I always used to try to explain to the younger kids coming in, but it's becoming more and more and more prevalent today. I always looked at the wrestling business. It's a business. Yes, you get into wrestling business because you love it, but let's face it, Joey, you guys have a very short shelf life. You want to make as much money as you possibly can. You're not going to be able to wrestle when you're 50, 60 years old. Yeah. So that's why I would always tell the guys, that's why you want to go out there and entertain and be a character. You're going to be able to prolong your career rather than go out there every time, put your body through World War III in a match that's a work anyway. I think a lot of the younger talent today, sometimes I just think a lot of them are not looking at this as, this is a business. I need to make as much money as I possibly can while I'm in the game. Would you agree with that or disagree?
I completely agree with that. Which is why, if you look at the thing that I did that went viral this weekend, like that's going to get me so much more T-shirt sales and I can raise my booking rate now and things like that. And that I didn't take a bump, I didn't hurt my body at all, and stuff like that is the stuff that, can get you, like if you, it's silly and it's over the top. And, I agree, the people who think it's dumb, I agree it is dumb, but the fact that it got me that much notoriety without having to, potentially injure myself by falling on my back or falling on my head or falling on my neck. And now I can make more money doing that. It's just, you gotta do what, like you said, you gotta take the moments you have and do whatever you can to stand out, to keep yourself relevant, and just to make sure that, people, if this is what you want to do, if this is your livelihood, that you make as much as you can before, for instance, I did a Cole Cabana's podcast on Friday, and Marty DeRosa was there, and he made a comment about saying like, oh, and for the next 50 years at WrestleCon weekends, you can go do photo ops with your penis, and I was like, hey, you know what? If that's
absolutely.
If I can still make money 50 years from now because of this thing going viral, then success. Then I win. So
Joey, let me stop you right there. Let's talk about this for a minute, because you and I are 1,000% on the same page. Somebody said to me, my co-host, as a matter of fact, that I do some shows with, he says, you got to watch this video. So he sends me your video. Joey, the first thing I saw was, and this was like almost a week ago, I don't even know what it is now. The first thing I saw was 500,000 hits. So I'm sitting there and I'm saying, okay, wait, let me do the math. Raw is like, dipping under 3 million people a week.
Yeah.
This clip with what this guy just did, 500,000, and it's only a couple of days old.
Yeah.
Joey, I don't know if you have the answer to this, because I don't. You do something that simple. You're on my show now. I thought it was the greatest thing I ever saw. It went viral. Everybody's talking about it. You had to put little to no effort into it whatsoever. You will be the guy with the bionic penis signing autographs when you're 60 and making a great payday. You will be that guy. Why do you think some guys choose to go in that ring with these high-risk maneuvers to the outside of the ring, jumping off this, jumping off that, when one small calculation, broken neck, you're in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, and your career is over? Why do they wind up going that route when there's a much easier route that's going to get you more over, because people are going to remember you? Is that ego? I don't know what it is, Joey.
You know what? It's hard for me to knock those guys, because some of those guys are really good at that style. And if everybody was out there trying to do penis spots, then it would make a penis spot less. So I feel like, I feel like one of the greatest things about pro wrestling is the fact that there's such a variety of characters and a variety of acts. And if I did this spot in my match and the next match did the same thing or a similar thing in the next match, I like to feel like there's guys that are great at high flying and can keep themselves as safe as they can doing that, and it presents a variety of the show, and it makes not only does it make their match different, but it makes my match different because they're doing that. Just like, we were talking about earlier that, I feel like presenting wrestling as a fake MMA fight is not the direction I enjoy as a fan or I would do myself. But some guys are really great at it. Some guys can do that style perfectly and, and get the crowd emotionally engaged in that. I feel like with wrestling, you guys have to kind of figure out what they're good at and then exploit that. So if you're great at high flying and you can do it, if your body's rubber and you're not getting, you're not breaking anything, and if that's your avenue to make money in wrestling and you're great at it, then go ahead and do that. If your avenue's fake MMA fighting, then if you can get it over, do that. If mine is comedy or whatever it is, then I'm going to do that. And I'm going to try to make as much money and make myself stand out as much doing what I do best, in the realm of professional wrestling.
But, Joey, I think there's one flaw with that, and I'll tell you what it is. Okay, listen, I worked 10 years at TNA. I wish I would have got to work with you, but I never did. But, who knows? But, Joey, this is what would happen. I would watch these X Division guys in the back, and all day long, Joey, this is what they're doing. They're memorizing their spots all day long because there's so many spots involved in that kind of a match. Now, Joey, what I would see was this. Because they're memorizing their spots, the first thing that would get thrown out the window is their character. How would their character act giving that spot or taking that spot? Their character would go out the window because they couldn't remember both. I can't remember these spots and remember how to sell them or receive them as a character. So what I would find out is, yeah, you had these great spots in these great matches, but everyone looked the same. No personality was getting over because they were worrying more about memorizing the spots. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but that could also go back to, like we said, when the guys in WWE now that are trying to just be a team player and appease the office and not get fired. A lot of those X Division guys were brought in specifically to do high spots. They weren't, like, oh, we saw this guy's clip on the indies and he was doing 450 splashes. He was diving to the outside. He was doing all this stuff. And then if you bring him in and he it again, it would be up to his discretion of taking the chance of whether, well, I'm not going to do all that stuff that got me invited to Impact. I'm going to just try to be my character. But then you risk the office being like, well, we didn't bring this guy in to not do his high flying. So I feel like a lot of times it's the guys trying to be team players, or at least doing what they thought they were brought in to do. Like, okay, if this is what brought me to the dance, I'm going to do what brought me to the dance on the dance. So, but I feel, I know exactly what you're saying, because, I've been wrestling a long time, and, I've done matches that are spot heavy. And the first thing, when I watch it back is, I'm like, that would have been a perfect time for me to pop up and do something character. But my mind wasn't on character. My mind was on what's next. So now, being, however many years I am into wrestling, now I understand that I need to leave things more open so I can react to the audience's reactions to me. And that's what works for me. So, I mean, I kind of understand both sides of the coin, but, I agree with you that character is the first thing to go. And that's might hurt whoever long-term, if they can't continue to do the spots the high flying spots that they're doing. But, in that, what you said works for me. I have to leave time in the match for me to do character stuff, or I can't be too worried about, okay, what's next. I have to have those breaks in there for me to, acknowledge the audience and emotionally engage them.
Okay. Now, Joey, listen, you gotta humor me here. Okay. Yeah. Because first of all, I am so highly disappointed in myself. I was, I came up with the character Val Venus. I did all those vignettes with Sean Morley and worked very, very closely with him. Bro, never once did a penis spot like ever. Now I'm looking at your gimmick and I'm like, what the freak was I thinking? I mean, am I an idiot? Like, of all things to not come up with. Joey, you have to walk me through, like, how this develops, what the conversation is, what's going through your mind, that you could do something like this that goes viral and has the entire world talking about you. Please walk me through it, just from my own warped mentality.
Sure. Obviously, given the promotion I was in, it was a DDT promotion in Japan, which is very comedy heavy to begin with. They have the character, the guy that I was wrestling in that spot, Dan Shukudino, who is a very homoerotic character, kind of like in the Gold Dust vein of the Attitude Era, where he uses his gay or his homosexual things to, freak out his opponents or play mind games with them or whatever. And he does a lot of, because it's more blatant there than it obviously was with Gold Dust, but he does things where he just grabs guys by the junk, and and the guy whatever, and then he takes advantage of it, an offensive advantage for it. So that's actually the dick grabbing or the penis grabbing. I don't know if the language I can use on the show.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
That's actually in his regular routine. That's actually a regular spot that he does. He usually does it and catches the guy off guard, and then he gives him some sort of offensive maneuver. When we were talking about it, though, we were trying to come up with something that would be different because, obviously I'm coming from America, I'm the foreigner here, and, our characters are both very sexual. So like this is kind of a built up like meeting for us, for the DDT audience. So we're trying to do stuff that was, like what would shock the audience. And, he said, blah, blah, blah. He's like, then he broke in English because, everyone speaks wrestling, but, he's just like, maybe I grab. I was like, okay. He's like, but maybe sell because American cock so big, so strong. Like, well, who am I to argue? And then we're just kind of like thinking, we're like, well, where can we go from here? Where can we go from there? And then I was like, well, maybe I can fire up. Maybe I can kind of hulk up with it. And then he's like, yeah. And because when you're calling a match with someone with a language barrier, you kind of act it out. Like, maybe I hulk up. He's like, yes. And then he's like, maybe me sell, and then bump. And I was like, okay. And that was literally, we just talked it over that one time, and I didn't even know he was going to take the flip bump. I think maybe he didn't even know until he got out there and kind of felt the spot going. But we didn't really think it was going to be anything special. We just thought it would be like in the course of this we did some really ridiculous things in this match. Like if anyone, it was actually a 6-man tag. If anybody watches the whole thing, it's just like gross out comedy spot after gross out comedy spot, and just So we just thought this was just part of the match. And then it actually aired kind of like an iPay-per-view over there. And somebody sent a link to me to the match when I watch it, and rarely do, because I'm kind of, I watch my stuff back and I'm like, oh, I could have done this better. I rarely like pop myself with stuff. I always think I could do better. And then I was watching that, and I watched the spot happen, and I actually like kind of giggled and laughed out loud when I was like, that's so stupid. It's so ridiculous. And it was the 27-second clip or whatever. It's like, I'm going to clip just this 27 seconds. I was like, I'm going to post it on Twitter just because it made me laugh. And that was all my thought of it, is like, we just did this spot in a series of comedy spots in a comedy match. And that part made me laugh. So I'm going to take that part out and isolate it, put it on Facebook and Twitter, and then just blew up from there. So, it wasn't even like we didn't even plan to like make it go, like try to get it to go viral. It wasn't a thing where we thought we were doing anything that was even too outside the box, but I guess it was, because it took off, and now it's got mainstream media coverage, and it's got, a ton of views, like you mentioned, and just, it's been like a whirlwind last few days.
Joey, I have to ask you this. One of the problems, I think, with wrestling today, and listen, Joey, I am always at war with like the internet wrestling community and, said dirt sheets. I'm not going to mention anybody. I am always at war with them, because one of the problems I feel with wrestling today that's happening is, man, somewhere along the line, Joey, everybody just started taking themselves just so damn seriously. And I go back to like, adorable Adrian Adonis, and I go back to the Goldust character and Val Venus and people like this. But all of a sudden in 2015, wrestling has just become so freaking serious. Like, God forbid, we really do laugh at something. Matches are rated on a 5-star system. And yeah. I just feel like it's gotten so far away from what it used to be. What has been the lashback to you now? Listen, this obviously, Joey, works for you. And yeah. I know you're intelligent enough. That's all you freaking care about. The fact that this went viral and it's everywhere, you did your job, and I applaud you. But has there been like a negative feedback by just people that take wrestling matches way too seriously?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't really felt too much of it. I've been told things like, like a lot of salty vets and things like that, or this isn't this is making wrestling look bad. But, I just, like you said, it's fun and it's silly, and it's got mainstream attention, and I feel like, a lot of my friends that I did shows with this past weekend, they're like, hey, my mom saw the clip and she was like, do you know this guy? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be on a show with him this weekend. She's like, oh, tell him it was awesome. And it's like, it's a lot of like outside the wrestling community. And I feel like some of the backlash might be like, because, if somebody's in wrestling or somebody likes wrestling, now their friends that aren't in wrestling or their family members that aren't in wrestling are like, hey, did you see that clip? Hey, and they're like, and they're kind of resistant. Like they don't want the outside world looking at their thing. Like, oh, like, he's bringing all this attention, like, cause obviously like, it looks silly and it looks stupid, but I feel like the resistance has been maybe because it's bringing so much outside attention that these guys that are grasping onto wrestling, I don't want this outside attention looking at what I like, the thing I like. But it is what it is, well, Joey,
you know what it is, and I think you hit the nail dead on there again, because one of my things that I'm very, very concerned about, obviously, when I look at the audience for the Attitude Era and the audience today, one of the things that I've been saying over and over and over again is wrestling is turning itself into a niche market. You have to be a wrestling fan to watch Monday Night Raw. Whereas compared to the Attitude Era, there was something for everybody. College students could watch it in their dorm. older guys could watch it and get off on Sable. Then you had the girls that could watch for Shawn Michaels and DX. Then you had the blue-collar workers that hated their boss and were watching for Austin. Like, the masses watched the show. The television viewers watched the show. They weren't necessarily wrestling fans. And what I see happening is the more and more and more emphasis you put on wrestling, if you're not a wrestling fan, you're not going to watch the show. So you're turning it into a very small niche audience. What you did was something that I think people of all ages could laugh at and crack up. I can't believe that guy did that. Hey, you got to see this. It's that type of thing. That's what I feel is missing from the business today.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, first of all, anybody who says like, I'm ruining wrestling, like for this doing this, but like my first reaction is like, I'm ruining wrestling, like I'm the one who's doing it. And like I don't feel like, it's my fault that more people are emotionally invested in my penis than they are in the WWE title picture. It's not my fault that it's everything's a reaction to what it is. So if people are more taken to mind, like you said, maybe my thing's getting more views than Raw is. That's not my fault. That should be Raw's fault for not stepping up their game. I'm not trying to say that what I did is going to change wrestling, but I feel like there's always been this kind of resistance, like even to the Attitude, or even before the Attitude Era. Like, wrestling traditionalists would complain in the 80s that Hulk Hogan was throwing punches as a babyface. Like, oh, that's never going to work. He's throwing punches as a babyface. But obviously Hulk Hogan worked. Or, in the Attitude Era, like, oh, Steve Austin can't flip people off. He's a babyface. Or, yeah, he can, and it's working. I feel like the biggest things in wrestling are the things that break the mold. And like I said, I'm not comparing myself onto the grand scale of a Stone Cold Steve Austin, but I feel like because what I did is completely out of the norm. And maybe if this video had come out during the Attitude Era, it wouldn't have been completely breaking the norm. But the last few years of what wrestling has been perceived and taught to its audience, this is what I did was completely out of whack. So I feel like that even helped the attention that it got.
Yeah. Hey, Joey, you listen, you're very smart. I mean, I love this conversation I've had with you. You're the kind of guy, Joey, that I really feel I feel like you can write your own ticket, because I always say, I tell this to everybody I ever meet, Joey, there was a reason Rock became a huge movie star, and having worked with him, I could say the reason was he was smarter than everybody else. It was all up here. And you're that type of a guy, running your own promotion and,
yeah.
In this business, what would be the one thing like that you want to accomplish? Being smart, being intelligent, understanding the landscape. What is the one thing that you want to accomplish? The one thing that you want to do?
I mean, it's gotten through so many changes over my life. Obviously I got into wrestling because I was, WWF fan, or, now WWE, but back then WWF. So like for the years and years, I would think, well, if I can't get there, then I'm going to be, I'm a failure if I don't get there. But, the fact that I've been able to sustain myself and, make a full-time living doing this on my own, I kind of pride myself more now about being able to do that than I would, I'm more proud of myself for doing that than I would be if I had a, 2 or 3 year run in WWE or whatever. So it's like, it keeps changing, it keeps evolving. And actually, speaking of like, acting stuff, is I've been kind of dabbling in that a little bit. I had a modeling agency approach me for doing some modeling stuff, and through them, I've gotten some auditions and things like that. And it's like, I've lived in LA my whole life, and I never really thought about that, but it's all right here. And so I was like, well, as I get older and maybe I can't bump as much, maybe that's my transition, or maybe that's what I go into. So, I mean, it's ever changing, it's ever evolving. And it's just like, just challenging myself with new things. And And getting to wrestle in Japan and getting to wrestle around the world. I wrestled in India for Jeff Jarrett. I go to Australia and England regularly, like just getting flown around the world to wrestle. Like I look at my successes as, or those things as like, these are great accomplishments. And this is what, I made it essentially. If I can sign autographs at WrestleCons for the next 50 years because of my penis spot, then then whatever, so it's ever changing. Maybe one day I'd like to do. I mean, I've had matches in the WWE's, like dark matches and like SmackDown jobs and things like that. But like if I was ever a kid, maybe that would be kind of cool. But I'm not like hanging my hat on that as I once did when I was younger. But yeah, my goals are ever changing. So I mean, it's hard to point one thing out right now.
I think that would be difficult for you at this point, Joey, because obviously with your own promotion for 12 years, you're your own guy. I think it would be really, really difficult for somebody to hold you back and not do what you really feel that you have to do.
Yeah, I mean it would be a challenge for sure.
Now, Joe, I got to ask you this, and then I'm going to let you hit me with all your plugs. But listen, you keep saying penis spot. So you have not come up with a name yet for this. But is the merch on the way? I have a feeling that the merch is already on the way.
There's already a T-shirt out right now that is actually I think it came out 4 days ago, and it's like the number 2 best-selling shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees right now, which is great because the Pro Wrestling Tees has like Steve Austin shirts, CM Punk shirts. So it's great that my shirt was able to, at least for this week, be a top seller.
Was that actually your first shirt with them?
No.
You had others. Okay, yeah.
I've had a ton.
What does it say? Just give me some idea, because now you got me curious.
It's because even today there's no real name for it. So a shirt designer sent me a graphic. It was a drawing of Dan Chukwudino grabbing me and like me firing up, and it says testicular strength on it. And it's just like a funny little cartoon of it, and it's selling great. And I have another one coming out. It's a parody of a New Japan shirt coming out tonight, actually at midnight. And it's going to be the second shirt, and I feel like that's going to sell well too. It's just
isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing, Joey? Like, because I find myself doing this all the time, where everybody gets so involved and like it becomes rocket science, but then you do something so simple. Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I think we overthink a lot of things. And I think basically, you were proof of that. Something that simple, that unique to go viral, T-shirts, the whole 9 yards. I think there's a lesson in that for everybody.
I mean, if like striking where the iron's hot is all about wrestling. So as soon as that thing started going viral, I knew I needed a shirt right away because I had to. I got to capitalize. Like I'm my own business. I'm my own independent contractor, and I'm more invested in me than anybody else is. So I got to make sure that if it's a cash grab, I got to make sure I got to grab the cash when the iron's hot. So,
and Joey, I got to tell you, that's the difference between wrestling today and wrestling 10 years ago. And this is the God honest truth. I'm not pulling your leg. Your leg, I'm not pulling, Joey. If I saw that video, and my reaction was, this is the greatest thing I've ever saw. I loved it. It went viral. If I had seen that video and I was working for TNA, WCW, or WWE, I would have called you immediately. That's the difference between now and then. I mean, something like that, because like you said, strike when the iron's hot. You could go national with that. It would be huge. It would be hysterical. So much that you can do with it. But again, if we're gonna real wrestle in the ring, something like that is just gonna go right over my head. That's my opinion.
I mean, you look like a friend of mine made an obvious observation that he said WWE spent the last 15 or so years trying to convince the mainstream media that wrestling is family friendly, and in 3 days you completely ruined the media. So
congratulations, good for you.
It's once again not family friendly, but so I didn't expect them to call and be like, "Hey, could you come grab, let your penis get grabbed on Raw?" I didn't think that was going to happen, but but you're right, it is different. It's a different atmosphere now and a different time, and so like I have to self promote.
Of course, man. Here's the beautiful thing, Joey. I give you all the credit in the world for trying it. A lot of people, the idea may have run through their heads and they would have said, "Oh, what's everybody going to say?" and blah, blah, blah. But the fact that you did it and you had the balls to do it and now it's played off to your benefit, I think that's great, man.
Yeah, it's been, like I said earlier, it's been a whirlwind. It's been crazy. The fact that it was in Maxim and GQ and Cosmopolitan and, it was on The Soup on the E Network. Great. It was on ESPN, the ESPN show Highly Questionable. They played the clip. It's just great. It's been crazy. Good for you.
Well, Joey, listen, give me all your plugs. Tell everybody where they can follow you, get tickets to your shows, DVDs. Hit me with everything.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, I want to apologize for all the sniffling and snot wiping because I do have a cold. So if it came off, I apologize to anybody listening or watching this, first and foremost. But second of all, I'm on Twitter. It's at Joey Ryan Online is my Twitter handle. I plug everything there. All the shows I'm on, all of my merch, my Pro Wrestling Tee stores, prowrestlingtees.com/Joey Ryan. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, all the social media stuff, because like I said, I got to self-promote. But yeah, I'm always advertising every show I'm on or every DVD that comes out or every shirt that I have for sale on all the different forms of social media.
Well, Joey, listen, man, I loved meeting you. Man, it's weird that we didn't get to work together. We must have just kept missing each other.
Yeah.
I wish I would have had the opportunity, but it was great talking to you today, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, Joey, I'm going to end this. I'm going to wrap up. Don't go anywhere yet because I just want to personally thank you.
Sure.
But there you have it, everybody. Listen, I'm right from here. I'm not even kidding you. I'm going to prowrestlingtees.com. I got to see what this T-shirt looks like, and I might be wearing it on the very next show that you see me on. I got to tell you that. But anyway, that's this edition of The Swerve. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back next week. Take care, everybody.
Critically acclaimed producers Kayfabe Commentaries bring you the most candid shoot interview ever with Sabu, nephew of the legendary Sheik.
Would your aunt be talking business?
Of course.
With the Sheik?
Oh, yeah. And Carney. She can speak Carney better than me.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Prepare to explore the darkest corners of the man behind Sabu.
I would have stopped pain pills entirely if I was out of pain. Because I've been a little too long at the dance myself.
You feel now you've been too long at the dance?
Breaking Kayfabe with Terry Sabu Brunk, now available on DVD and on demand at shootinterviews.com.